my name is Jemima Mboma and this is my video essay. In this video, I will be discussing the principle of group dynamics. I will be explaining how these principles were applied in the social movement known as Fees Must Fall, hashtag Fallism. Now, this social movement gained mass attraction back in 2015 all across the country, and in my opinion, I think it will go down historically as one of the biggest protests held by students in the 21st century here in South Africa. A brief introduction or a brief background about the social movement. Now, the movement was initiated by a group of students from the University of Witwatersrand in 2015 to express their grievances about the increase of school fees and how it had impacted them. Majority of those impacted were Black students and students from underprivileged backgrounds. Now, as early as 2008 to 2015, school fees had increased by 9% per annum. And statistically, given about 10% of undergraduates did not return to university the following year due to being unable to pay for their financial debts. They were unable to pay for their school fees, so they experienced financial exclusion. And this became a serious problem. The hashtag fallism was not only speaking to school fees, but it also spoke to the other social issues that the students were experiencing at the university. This included inequality, patriarchy, capitalism, and even homophobia as well. In sociology this semester, we discussed a very core or important point about group dynamics from week 1 up to week 5. We discussed the factors of a group, what defines a group, the social status, social influence, power, um, leadership effectiveness, as well as even cohesion, social facilitation, and the group structure and norms. And I'm going to be explaining how each of these come to play in the movement of Fees Must Fall. Okay, so without wasting any more time, I am going to apply the principles of group dynamics for this movement, right? So we have factors that make a group. In this case, what made this movement a group? Students interacted with each other on campus. They got to socialize and understand each other's perspectives of how they were affected by the increase of the school fees. Right, they were able to sustain relations with one another as well. The movement had goals. The goals was to fight social injustice, social inequalities, to fight also against the increase of fees, which led to the exclusion of students who could not come back to study because of financial debt. Right, interdependence. Right, the group functioned in a certain way. The group had leaders and those who mobilized others to bring about that balance, to get others to join the cause. Right, leadership. Now, the leadership consisted of students who were part of the SRC, Student Representative Council. They were the ones that led the students, that helped organize the protests, the marches, and, meeting up with the Vice Chancellor to express their grievances along with the grievances of the student. And also there was cohesiveness, meaning the students came together and were unified because they had that purpose, they had that desire, which was to see fees fall. Right, moving on, also we have different types of groups that exist. This group in particular was a collective. The students did not have any personal relationships with each other, but they usually gathered because they were coming for the same purpose. They were fighting for the same cause, so they would gather and protest, and afterwards they would dissolve and go their separate ways. There was very little intimacy or very little relations amongst them, right? And then we have why people joined the social movement. Now, many of the students joined the social movement for inclusive support, emotional support, and informational support, in my opinion, right? They joined because First of all, in inclusive support, there was that inclusivity to say that they were not alone. There were students who were going through this financial exclusion, and being a part of the movement, being a part of the group felt made them feel like they were not alone. They were being seen, they were being heard. Emotional support. There were those who were going through a lot of emotional distress because they were very affected by the fact that they could not continue their studies. And it was very good to know that there were people who sympathized and empathized with them. They could, they were encouraged, and they were supported emotionally, right? Informational support, those who were given advice and guidance, right? Those who received on um information on what was happening, information on exclusion, information on the fight against fees must fall. We also have social motivations, which speaks to affiliation, intimacy, and power. Those who wanted to be affiliated with a group that was fighting for the rights of students, fighting for students to get justice, financial justice, if we can look at it that way. Those who joined for intimacy, because through this movement they got to know each other better, they got to meet new people and form relations. And also power, those who felt like if they joined this movement they would be able to express themselves and put themselves out there, put their points out there, put their grievances out there. We also have the principles of attraction. We spoke to proximity, similarity, elaboration, reciprocity, complementary, and minimax, right? Proximity, those who felt like, you know what, I'll be able to join the protest because I live closer or I live on campus. Similarity, those who joined because they felt like they had similar interests with those who were already part of the movement. They felt like, okay, we relate, so we are going to join. Minimax, those who attended because they know there would be benefits, meaning they knew that if fees were to fall, everyone was going to benefit from it, so they joined. Reciprocity, that mutual attraction between students, I want to join and you want me to join, you want me to be a part of this movement. Also complementarity, excuse me, those who felt like, you know what, we are not similar but we complement each other well. Extrovert and an introvert who would work together in within the movement, and they would complement each other very well. We have the group structure. Now, the group structure consisted of the leadership, meaning the students that led, that mobilized and organized all these things, and then the student that followed them. There was that structure that was established. One of the student leaders was Shira Kala. She was in the forefront, leading the students, organizing the protests, organizing the marches, and her role consisted of what I just mentioned. And there were those who worked with her, right, who were behind her, who supported her. And obviously there was that conformity where the group understood why they were there and what they were there to do, which was to fight, which was to raise their concerns, which was to resist the fees, that were being imposed from them, the percentage increases that were given to students, which was already too high and unfair for them. We also have the different types of social influences that got students to participate: information, implicit, interpersonal, and normative, right? Each of these played a part. There were students who saw what was happening and were like, we would like to join the movement to fight. There were those who heard about what was happening and felt like, they were moved and felt like they would like to be a part of the fight against the fees must fall, along with other social injustices. And there were those who took that personal decision to say that we will not back down, we will not watch as other students struggle to make ends meet. Right, meaning be able to come to school and attend and not be excluded because of finances. We also have social power, meaning the amount of power that the student leaders were able to have when reaching out to students to participate and go on these marches with them. The power they were able to have to implement changes, to implement movement. And this is something that was very important. We also have the leadership as well, the leadership styles. I would say that the leadership style of the vice chancellor, along with those in management, was autocratic. They made decisions without involving the students and would just pass it on. And I think it was very unfair. Despite 30 years later living in a democratic state, there were still autocratic decisions that were still being taken, and the increase of school fees was an example of this, right? This would speak to the leadership styles, right? And we come down also to cohesion. So as I did mention, the students were very much united because they were all coming to fight for one cause, right? 30 years into democracy, they were fighting against racism, fighting against academic exclusion. Mind you, I did mention that a majority of those who were impacted by academic exclusion were Black students, students from underprivileged, and historically we know that post prior to 1994, Black students went through a whole struggle fighting for education, fighting against the Bantu system, fighting for the same treatment as white students, being able to um, get opportunities, being able to get access to be able to, to study, without being excluded, right? And 30 years later, to see that this was something that was still happening, they were excluded, but in a different way through finances. This was something that brought students to say, no, enough was enough, and something needed to be done. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching my video on the fees must fall. Thank you so much once again.